Let me welcome everyone to our expert webinar session on Premier Golf, how on-course optimization tech has led to efficiency and revenue gains. And I would, before I introduce, or as this is going to happen now, I'm going to hand over to Frank from the Pacific Northwest PGA section. Frank, thank you so much for joining us. Over to you.
Thank you, Bodo. I wanted to take a few minutes to not just introduce our guest speakers, but also a little housekeeping here as well. So first of all, good morning and thank you all for logging on for today's education. My thanks especially to today's speakers, Premier Golf's Director of Operations, Mr. Mike Fosnick, who will share valuable insights into how the leading MCO for municipalities in the Northwest has embraced technology to achieve great results across more than 10 facilities. Mike today will be joined by Mr. Andrew Schaub, the General Manager at Bellevue Golf Club, one of Premier's top performing courses. Andrew will unpack how Bellevue has boosted revenue and increased efficiency by using on-course optimization technology. Today's Stay Involved webinar is presented by Tag Marshall, an outstanding section sponsor for the last 3 years. In fact, my PNW PGA section tournament staff is looking forward to using their equipment at some of our events in 2025. The title of today's webinar is Premier Golf, How On-Course Optimization Tech Has Led to Efficiency and Revenue Gains. Before we begin, some quick housekeeping items first. We are recording today's webinar for those that want to watch and learn later. If at any time you want to access past Stay Involved webinars, please do reach out to Molly Cooper and she will send you a link for your access. Second, as this webinar is being conducted on the Zoom platform today, our friends at Tag Marshall are already tracking all attendees. You do not have to complete a survey like typically to receive your PGA required PDR or half AMP education credit for your attendance. If you have any questions regarding that, please contact Molly at mcooper@pgahq.com. Please do note that it does take a few weeks to get your credits posted into your pga.org account. We thank you in advance for your patience. Also, if you are not already on mute, please do so at this time. If you forget to do so, please don't be offended if we mute your mic while someone else is speaking. We want to make sure to have any background noises eliminated during the presentation. For those of you joining by phone, to get on or off mute, hit simply *6. Lastly, questions are encouraged. Please feel free to type in your questions into the chat feature for those of you joining by video, or else raising your hand by first clicking Participants button in the menu panel and then selecting Raise Hand. One last thanks to all of you for taking the time to join us this morning. Please now join me in welcoming our friends, Mr. Fosnick and Mr. Schaub. Gentlemen, the floor is yours.
I love that picture you found of me. I'm a big Seahawks fan, and I'll watch Seahawks in the rain. I'll watch Seahawks in the sun. It doesn't matter. So, yeah, good picture choice. Thank you.
Nice one. We do. Our team does know our way around Google Images. So, also, we have more than 50 people with us this morning, which is a great turnout. And so clearly there's no Seahawks game on at the moment. Yeah, Mike and Drew, thank you so much for taking the time of being with us. And Frank, thanks so much for the introduction. Yeah, we really appreciate our partnership with you and your team and at the section. And yeah, excited to hear that you are going to track some of your events. We actually recently tracked the Ladies Open at St. Andrews Old Course. So moving up in the world of tournament golf as well, which is awesome to see, and our team was very proud of that. But yeah, let's jump into an introduction to yeah, our feature golf course, which is Bellevue. Drew, why don't you do a quick intro on the course, what you're famous for, and also yourself and how you ended up being the GM there.
Sure, thanks. So yeah, my name is Drew Schaub. I grew up in Western Washington. Started my career at Echo Falls in the golf shop and worked my way up through assistant golf professionals, and then head golf professional at the golf club at Redmond Ridge. Most recently at the Plateau Club as their head golf professional. Then I was approached by Mike and Troon about the opportunity to take over here at Bellevue as the general manager. After discussing it with them and viewing the property, I jumped at the opportunity and came right over. It's a busy golf course, 72,000 rounds last year on an 18-hole facility. It is busy. We've got a double-decker range that keeps us busy, so it is nonstop action here. We did over 5 million in revenue last year, which was really nice for an 18-hole facility. It's a busy golf course. It's a small footprint in terms of a golf course acreage. So we were always battling with the problems of pace of play and the perception of pace of play. So before coming here, you know, being a local guy, I heard about Bellevue a lot. I heard about the reputation of long round times. It was kind of known. I heard it around the area. So when I got here, that was kind of my first challenge, was trying to figure out how to bring those down. And then after a while, once I figured it out, it really wasn't long round times. It was the perception of the long round times. So, you know, we have very short walks from green to tee. Like I said, a small footprint. So you see a lot of golfers, a lot of areas. So using Tag Marshal was kind of the first step that we started to learn that our rounds were actually about 4.5 hours, but the perception was a lot longer than that because you are waiting quite a bit. So utilizing this technology and then the kind of the accessories that we added to the golf shop. So when the golfers are checking in, they can see what the round times are. They can see where golfers are out on the golf course. Things like that was something that really, really changed the perception very quickly, almost instantaneously, on how long their day is going to be out on the golf course, because it's up front, tells them right there, right when they check in on the monitor. You know, it kind of helps us self-marshal the groups. So when the groups are out there and they have, you know, one person in the group that thinks they're out there for 6 hours, and then there are 3 buddies say, no, remember when we checked in, the TV showed it was, you know, 4 hours and 27 minutes. We made the turn in 2 hours and 10 minutes. I know it might have felt a little slower than that, but our time was right on what it is saying due to Tag Marshal. So it's been a great technology to use so far. Like I said, the accessories that we have here in terms of the monitors, as well as our marshals having tablets that are able to track golfers, things like that, tracking the groups, figuring out where our problem groups are quickly and getting out to address those as fast as we can to make sure that everybody enjoys their day out there.
Amazing, Drew. Thank you, and you really have stepped up in terms of the number of rounds that you used to run versus the whirlwind that you find yourself in now. Did you say that Bellevue is the busiest course in the state?
State of Washington, 18-hole facility, yeah, 72,000 rounds according to data, was the most rounds played on a Washington State course for 18 holes. So like he was just referring to, I came from a private club that did about 18,000 rounds last year. So going from 18 to 72 was a big jump. And, you know, the pace of play is always number one priority from, you know, 99% of the golfers.
Yeah. Amazing. And well done for dialing into things so effectively. Mike, you and I have been on a webinar before, and I know that you've dialed in quite a few of your courses. Give us a quick intro as to your role and what it is that you're after from an operations point of view, and just looking at that higher level across the clubs that you have got to manage.
Yeah, thank you, Bodo. I'm the director of operations, so I get to team with 11 general managers, 7 different cities. When it comes to success, ultimately, our most important aspect is the golfer experience, as Drew was mentioning there. Perception is reality in a lot of ways. When a golfer thinks he's playing in 5.5 hours and he's actually playing in 4.5, and that information is not given to him, you know, they set the standard, and then it's a he said, she said type of thing. So what I look at more is the financial aspect of course optimization and revenue gains. So every course has an owner. Some of them are privately owned, some of them are publicly owned. And as much as the golf course experience resonates with all of them, the bottom line is really probably the most important thing to most. Revenue is a planned event. Profit drives everything. So if a golf course is profitable, they can reinvest into the property with money that they've gained through an optimal performance year, so to speak. So getting down to just the basic numbers, we've already this year done 459,000 rounds in our premier portfolio. I mean, we're going to probably top out at 550 to 600,000 rounds. So when you think about that, the average revenue per unit is a barometer that you can use to gauge do people want to play your golf course or do they want to go somewhere else? So, I mean, why does a private club charge $175 for a guest fee? Well, because the conditions are superb, the pace of play is excellent, the service is excellent, everything about it is first class. Okay, so why would somebody want to play a municipal golf course and pay more? Well, the same factors apply. So one of the most important factors when you're talking about 459,000 rounds is, are they enjoying themselves? Are they coming back? Or are they going elsewhere? So I'm going to throw you under the bus, Drew. It's not really your fault, but Bellevue was one of our courses that had that reputation of being very slow, excruciating slow, and we didn't have the ability to truly reset the perception until we added Tag Marshall there. Now we're getting more and more positive reviews because Drew's team is very proactive in communicating what the actual time is going to be. So his performance rating when it comes to reviews has gone way up because the one negative factor that was dragging Bellevue down for years and years has disappeared. So back to the financials, our average revenue per round at the courses that employ Tag Marshall is $32.50. Our average revenue per round at the courses that we don't have Tag Marshall is slightly under $30. So you think, okay, $2.50, big deal, right? Well, extrapolate that over 459,000 rounds or 350,000 rounds at the courses that do have Tag Marshall and the 144,000 rounds at the courses that don't have Tag Marshall. That $2.50 is a huge game changer. So when golfers want to play a facility, course conditions obviously play a factor. Service plays a factor, but believe it or not, one of the most important factors and one of the biggest complaints we get is pace of play when we have a facility that doesn't do a good job of communicating the expectations. So when it comes to revenue gains, I can emphatically state that Tag Marshall has been a great assistance in our ability to generate more revenue per round and more revenue over last year, even though our rounds are flat. You know, last year we set record rounds. We had record rounds, never more rounds, 620,000 rounds or something like that. So even though the rounds are flat this year, our revenue is up 8%. And you're talking about a couple, maybe $800,000-900,000 over last year with the same amount of rounds. So it's a huge factor when it comes to revenue maximization. And I encourage anybody that has not introduced themselves to this particular optimization, you're really missing out because it's truly a game changer, and it has been for us, and the financials prove it.
Thank you, Mike, and thank you for being so transparent also about your performance. I think that's really a breath of fresh air, and I do think that is how you make the industry better, right? If you're sharing what you're learning, and I want to thank you guys again for taking the time. So two things to pick up. One is the incremental nature of success, right? And you're saying, well, $3 a round, big deal, right? But if your input cost of a system is 20 cents for that round, it is a big deal, right? In terms of the ROI that you can generate. And the second point that you're mentioning is perception. And my dad always says time passes differently depending on which side of the bathroom door you're at. And that's exactly the perception that sometimes players have out on the golf course versus the reality that you can only really understand if you have data. And that's what we want to dig into in our conversation today. If you don't mind, let me do a quick introduction on Tag Marshall. So incremental improvement and optimizing what we believe is the economic engine of the golf course is our game. And Mike already spoke to this. We now next year are going to celebrate 10 years in the business. We have tracked 75 million rounds of golf. Obviously, that's exciting. As a data company, we learn from all of that because our algorithms and our system eats this data and gets smarter with it. And then we have more than 600 partner courses. This year particularly has been exciting because we had a few of our partners host amazing events, like Pinehurst hosted an awesome US Open, Valhalla hosted the PGA Champs, and like I mentioned in the introduction, St. Andrews, the old course. Also great to see for us that a 470-year-old bastion of tradition is embracing technology, right? And they're using our program day to day, but then recently at the Ladies Open, the event was tracked. Yeah, so we're very excited to be working with some of the very best, and I would count the Premier Group as really ahead of the game when it comes to utilizing data and dialing into technology also in the management company space. Yeah, let's go back to the player experience, because ultimately, Mike, while you were saying revenue is what drives the bus and it's planned, you can only sell anything if you have a good product, right? So the question is, and ultimately the player experience is what we're selling. That is our service. We're creating an experience for people to enjoy. Going back to Drew, what would you say are the top 3 if we're launching a quick poll here? I can actually try and get our guests to also participate in this, if my technology allows. Out of this list, course design, conditioning, clubhouse amenities, pace and flow of play, playing partners, who's in my group, accessibility, tea time availability, Saturday morning, 8 a.m., value and cost. What would you say are the top 3 when it comes to the player experiences? What are the ones that matter the most?
Yeah, with my experience in the golf industry, being in public and private properties, pace and flow of play is definitely number 1. Accessibility to tee time availability on the public side, as well as some of the private clubs that are very busy. That's a very important part, as well as value and cost. At the end of the day, is it worth the value of what I just paid? Do I want to come back and do it again, or do I want to look somewhere else?
Yeah, value and cost. Value comes down to yeah, again, perception, right? And you mentioned 2 other critical factors. Mike, do you see it any differently, or are you aligned here with Drew?
Well, I'm fortunate. We do player surveys at our golf courses, and by far, the 2 major complaints are course conditioning and pace of play. Course design, people are going to pick where they like to play, most likely within the vicinity of where they live. Value cost, sure. I think if you were going to travel to a Chambers Bay, you would probably pay more because of the layout, the design, and the history. Clubhouse and amenities, not as big a deal. I mean, most pure golfers are there for the golf, they're there for the course. But what we really circled in on was those 2, course conditioning and pace of play. And it wasn't just our opinion, it was the overwhelming opinion of our golfers. So we took a pragmatic approach. It's like, okay, what can we improve? We have course conditioning. We do maintenance at 4 of our golf courses that they are our employees, and we put a lot of resources into those golf courses. And I think if you looked at Lake Padden, Cedar Crest, if you looked at Ocean Shores, if you looked at Linwood, all of those golf courses are in fantastic shape. Drew's course is also in fantastic shape. Their superintendent and their team put a lot of resources into the golf course. Some of the other city courses, they're strapped by finances and strapped by the ability to hire and pay appropriately. Course conditions struggle a little bit more. So that's when pace of play becomes more of an issue. So we tackled it head on. With the most important factor is setting a realistic expectation and communicating that to the golfer before they went out. So Drew's got a TV above his counter, and the staff is constantly mentioning to the golfers as they're checking in, hey, pace plays 3 hours and 30 minutes today. Maybe it's a Monday afternoon or a Tuesday mid-morning type thing. on Saturday. He's got 350 golfers. Hey, we're running 4.5 today. We're going to do the best we can. But that communication is made prior to the golfer going out on the golf course. So what we're trying to do is take pace and flow play out of the negative comments in our surveys. And we've seen a significant drop in complaints regarding pace and flow of play from the golfers who are playing our courses that we have implemented Tag Marshall. So that's really who we listen to, is we listen to our golfers and we give them the opportunity to give us feedback. So it's critical. And I think it's also critical that when we look at our financial success, even though our rounds this year are flat to last year, we're still able to charge more because the experience is worth it. And a lot of golf courses, if the rounds are flat, the revenue drops. So we feel really good about the fact that this technology helps us communicate and helps us mitigate one of the major pain points that golfers experience is the perception of slow play, flow of play, those kind of things.
Yeah, that's great, and it always pays to be customer led, right? Because they are the most important aspect of your operation ultimately. So I think we got your view, and you're saying you've done extensive polling, and you also want to know were we successful with your post-round surveys, and our guests on sitting in on the webinar have also voted, and they came to a similar conclusion in that pace and flow of play is very important, followed by course conditioning and value. Alignment there. There's broader research here that suggests that course conditioning comes out top when you ask golfers broadly as number one. Playing partners, who's in my group, number two. That's more for them to determine and design. And then pace is number three, right? So it's a top three factor, but interesting also for operators. This is probably more recent. Also, obviously now that golf is in such beautifully high demand, 84% of operators are also saying it's a top three priority. So this is a more recent NGCOA survey. The deeper research shows the polarity of pace when it comes to the player experience. So if you get it right, you're winning all the way and you get high ratings, and everything else that you do shines. If you get it wrong, nobody can see anything else, right? So that's where, whatever magic your superintendent's done, people can't even see it because they're fuming, right? But as we said, very often it's perception. So this research here actually comes from the University of Wisconsin with the USGA, and they found that out of 1,000 touch points in the golfer experience, other people's speed, and sometimes also the perception of that, and corrective pace of play actions is the overall worst score out of anything that happens in a golfer experience. And reversely, positive ranger etiquette is the overall top score, even higher than conditioning. So there's a lot to be learned here, right? We have to sensitively tackle this. But how do you do that if you've got 70,000 rounds, 60,000 rounds to look after, and you don't have technology that helps you really know what's going on, and it's anecdotal, and maybe you're throwing a few people at the problem? They are really not in a good position to be successful here, because at the same time, the ranger role, the marshal role, ranger and marshal placement, they just can't get it right. That is where players are saying, we don't like it, we don't like it. And then don't you come to me and tell me I'm slow. I'm going to fight you, right? So other people's speed at the same time is what irritates players. So it's really a difficult thing to manage well. And thankfully, there's tech to help you do that. And we want to dial into how you are going about this. Just doing an introduction on the actual technology and how it works. So if you'll just allow me another 30 seconds here. So at Tag Marshall, we have built the core of the value we want to drive around the data and the business engine, right? Because what happens out on the golf course is what drives your business. And we want to make sure that that gets optimized. It's much like a factory, right? We want to optimize the throughput, and we want to optimize the quality of the output, right? That is a very German way of thinking about golf, so excuse me. Yeah, and we need to feed data so we can understand these variables, like what's happening out there with those 200, 240 players that are moving in a sort of more or less logical way. And it's a traffic problem, right? So we're feeding this data via 10-inch or 8-inch screens or via hidden away trackers, which is what's deployed at Bellevue. Or we have a walking option as well, because yeah, more and more golf courses obviously want to offer that walking ability. And yeah, there's also golf courses where you're only walking, like you mentioned, Chambers Bay and Bandon Dunes and so on, and it's an amazing experience. So we want to ensure that that gets optimized. And let me jump into, yeah, so yeah, these units are hidden away in the carts over at Bellevue. But Drew, from your point of view, and Mike, you mentioned there's a TV in the clubhouse, but for the listeners and viewers who don't know Tag Marshall, what are we looking at here? Like, how does this map make sense to your team? And also tell me, who have you got dialed into this, and what are they looking at here, and what would they do about it?
Sure. So our golf shop staff has this up on both their POS systems. They can toggle between the tee sheet as well as Tag Marshall. So what they're doing is they're looking at where the carts are. So you can see on there the numbered carts that are green. Those are our carts that are on pace or under pace. So those are always a good sign to see. You know, we kind of joke a little bit each day. We want to see all green out there. Then you start to see different colors. You have some yellows, which are slightly behind pace. And then the purple ones are our delayers. So the purple ones are probably the most important ones that we have to address, because those are the ones that are slowing down groups behind them. So you can kind of see 33 is holding 36, which is making them behind, which is now making 37 behind, things like that. So all the golf professionals know it's kind of an accordion effect. Once one group slows down, the rest are going to start slowing down right behind it. You're going to get that gap, and you just can't make it up unless you address it quickly to get them moving again. You also see on there, you have the black dots, which are either equipment, vehicles, or maintenance mowers, or you also can track your beverage carts where they're at any time. So if we have an issue or if we need somebody out there, you kind of have you can see everybody at the same time. So it really helps us identify problems quickly and get to that person as fast as we can, because we all know if we have a marshal that's going backwards around the 18 holes, it's going to take them 45 minutes an hour. They spotted him on 4. They're not going to see him again until 7 or 8, and that you could have already now shot yourself in the foot for the rest of the day, because that group did not pick up the pace. So if we can get out there and identify where they are quickly, chat with them in the right way to try and motivate them a little bit, and then it kind of starts to speed everything up again. But having the different colors is really important to us, just so we can kind of track it. And going back to what we mentioned with the monitor television in the golf shop, the golfers can see this. It's kind of it goes in between this screen as well as a list of the carts that are out there, kind of like an airport where you're looking at departures and arrivals. So the golfers kind of get a big kick out of it, because they're looking at it and joking around and seeing everybody out there. Oh, look at 33's behind and things like that. So it's kind of a nice little addition, because we get so many people that play here all the time, so that maybe hadn't been here this summer, they come back out and see this front and center, so they kind of embrace it all and kind of play games with it and figure out, okay, we can see how fast we're going to play today. So having this in all the different POS systems, so if we do get a call about something, whether it be a slow group, we can identify it. And we all know sometimes some group perceives a group in front of them that are very slow. You know, they might be faster than the group in front of them, but they're still on pace. So we can also identify that as well to make sure that those groups are still staying on pace. It also shows, like I said, the maintenance vehicles as well as the food and beverage, which is always crucial. If somebody needs something quickly, we can identify where they are and get them to where they need to go.
Yeah, thanks, Drew, for the introduction. So our system really looks at a number of variables that the algorithm then determines in a certain range of importance. And one of the main things that we want to know is this group out of position, but also are they impacting players behind them, right? Because a group that's 5 minutes off, but there's nobody behind them, well, that's not an issue that you need to tackle immediately. But if a group is 5 minutes off and they're already inconveniencing 8 players behind them, that is going to get worse. We also want to know the trend. Are they getting worse, or are they stable? Are they getting better? So all of these Also, how early on in their rounds are they falling out of position? Somebody's 5 minutes out of position on hole 2, that's probably going to be an issue. Somebody's 5 minutes out of position on hole 17, well, they're not going to do much more damage to your day, right? So we are calculating this constantly as players move across the zones on the golf course, and then we get a really good and accurate picture that's easy to read. We're making the biggest problem the biggest icon, so that anyone knows at a glance what's going on. Also, another thing to mention is, and I know you are you're really dialed into Club Profit as your tee sheet and point of sale. So we have about 20 or so integrations because we believe we want to plug into the existing infrastructure and just pull data via API and make sure that there's efficiencies around what you can do with your data as well, and there's no additional handling of data necessary.
Yeah, I'd like to add something there, Bodo.
Yeah.
Our marshals essentially go through, I would consider, de-escalation training.
Mhm.
So we really only want them to say two things. How was your day? And is there anything I can do to help you? We do not want them to engage in any kind of adversarial conversation at all. You need to speed up, you need to pick up, because those are proven to be the most detrimental communications when the player experience. So what we do use, because of Club Profit's integration, is that cart number 33 there, that has names attached to it. So the integration with the software, we know who they are. And what we found is cart 33 may play at 11 a.m. every single Saturday. And they may be slow every single Saturday. So when we can show that golfer or that group without creating an adversarial conversation, but just an honest conversation, is like, we need you to do one of two things. We need you to play a little faster so you're not delaying the entire field, or we need you to move to an off-peak time. And it's a subtle, non-subtle way of either encouraging somebody to improve or removing a problem, because what we find on our busiest days, which is usually our weekends, there's really only maybe 2 to 3 groups that hold up the entire day. And it usually starts around 11 o'clock. From 11 to 2 is when you start to see those groups, and they start to disappear. And then they turn purple. And where did they go? Oh, they stopped at the turn and they grabbed a bite to eat. Now they come back to the 10th tee and they're 2 holes behind. And the whole back of everybody behind them is just grind to a halt. So we can change those behaviors. And I don't have Drew be the bad guy. I usually will volunteer for that job, because I can call them, I can email them and have that conversation and hopefully eliminate what's a recurring problem. And that's the one thing people don't realize is, golfers are very habitual, and they will play the courses they like 2 to 3 times a week. So it's not 300 completely new people playing every Saturday at Bellevue. It's a lot of the similar faces. So we've taken it one step further, using the integration with Club Profit and the analytics to educate all the way down to the specific golfer and specific group, which we would never be able to do without this type of software.
Yeah, that's great. That's the deeper level of opportunity, right? But going back to what you mentioned, and I think that is a good opportunity for anyone on this call to also reconsider how do you train your marshals? Should they even be called marshals, right? Because the marshal name already is quite adversarial. So many of our partners actually change that and the positioning of that role, and they're calling them course assistants, right? Or course ambassadors, right? Which is a service role rather than a policing role. And then, yeah, the approach is, like you said, it's de-escalation. Don't ever go up to anyone and tell them they're slow, because they will fight you. it's like saying you're stupid. They don't like to hear that. But if you can show them data, well, that's not perception, that is a fact. And it's a very easy conversation. And also then you can package it. You can say, hey, you're half a hole out of position. Help us get back in position. That's easy to compute for a golfer because they think, yeah, we'll catch up, no problem. And I have not been adversarial at all. I've just told them their status, right? So this is where, yeah, the technology is really helpful. And also just going back to the previous slide, obviously, if you have a screen that interacts with the players, all of that information gets fed back to the players, right? So they can self-manage, which again then adds to the automation opportunity. There's obviously various ways of looking at the field, and one of them is with what we call the gap time monitor. So this is really a linear display of what happens, and you can immediately see if there's backups. You can immediately see if there's gaps in the field, and that's sometimes helpful. Even also for superintendents, right? Maybe not on your busiest days, but they would know where's the groups, is there a viable gap in the field, and they can get things done. But this is how the tours like to look at a field, right? Because they had a different course every week. They don't know the ins and outs and how things wind, but it's a very simple way of making sense of what's happening. And like you said, having the names on also, and that's pulled straight from the tee sheet, allows you to have a much more personalized approach to your service out on the golf course. Let's jump ahead. I did mention the screens, and obviously that allows for interaction. So this is you can then run things from your control center, if you will, but you can also set things up like if there's an accident zone, or the system will tell players, hey, you're in a geofenced area, please get out. So all of those things help when it comes to automation. And weather alerts, all good to have that interface and use it. And what we always encourage, and this happens in any of our systems, is to leave player assistant interaction notes. So if an interaction is had on the golf course, leave a note about it, and then it stores it at the location at the time and with which group. So if later on another intervention or interaction is necessary, you know, well, we've already spoken to these guys, even if somebody else on your team has done so. And that also gets stored in what we call a track map, which is a history of every single round that was ever played. So we're going to talk about that in just a minute. But let's look and let's give Mike an opportunity to talk a little bit more high level about the group reporting that him and the team like to look at. So here's what we're feeding, and we've blanked out the other course names, so we don't want to give it all away. Here's what we're feeding: how many groups were tracked, what's the round time down to the second, what percentage of groups are on pace, what's the dashboard views like, which of the clubs are really engaging with the system and which ones are not so much, so that Mike, knowing that if you do it well, there's revenue gains. If you do it well, there's net promoter score and post-round sentiment gains. He can really lean on his teams and up the performance. So we've got just two of these screens here to look at, Mike, from a group tracking point of view. But tell us a little bit, why is that important to you, just from an overall management opportunity point of view?
Well, and we're fortunate that our clients are trusting enough for us to employ Tag Marshall for this technology. And there's a direct correlation in average pace of play on time and the dashboard view. So, these are our golf courses. Obviously, like Boda said, he's blacked out the other courses, but if you look at the very worst ones, they have dashboard views of 0 and 21. So one of them's 533 rounds tracked, 43% on pace. The other one is 66% on pace, 0 dashboard views. So I'm going to have some conversations with those managers, because this is money that we are spending, that the cities are spending, for us to utilize this technology. So consequently, if you look at our most highest on pace, they are also the ones that have the most dashboard views. So they And if you look at the average round time, you can see nobody's even close to 5 hours. You know, it's really a nice technology, because there are days that you're going to have your pace of play under 4. And that's really good information to broadcast out to your customers when they come to the counter, because 4 hours seems to be, in a lot of people's mind, the standard for a round of golf. Well, you know, at our golf courses with, you know, 495,000 rounds, it's more like 4.5. And we do set what's called goal times. So we advertise those goal times, and those goal times are also on that screen that we broadcast out to the golfers at the counter. So we have a goal time, and then we have an actual time. So most of the time, our goal time is going to be beat quite often, except for our busiest days. And in our busiest days, when we have a goal time at 4 hours and 30 minutes, West Seattle, for example, is 4 hours and 40 minutes, because it takes a long time to play that golf course. It's very busy. So we can show that we are putting forth the effort, that we are paying attention to their time. We do care about their time. That's a very important message. This is just the tool that we use to communicate, but the message is we care about your time, and we are going to invest in making sure that we do our very best job. So as you can see, there are courses that I have employed Tag Marshal, but our team has not embraced. So it's an ever-evolving process. I also know that golf courses are very busy, and there's lots of other stresses. So I don't want this to be a major stress point on our counter staff, on our player assistants, on our managers, but I want them to be aware of what their pace of play reputation is. So I get this monthly report, and I have conversations. You know, it's not hard to take a look at what's happening on your golf course. As you can see, Bellevue with 205 dashboard views. That's not just Drew. That's Drew's team, you know, looking at what's going on his golf course. And as you can see, 72,000 rounds, 84% on pace is really, really good. Really good.
And if I can jump in there real fast, Mike, just having that television up, it kind of eliminates some of those dashboard views, because it is live all day, every day, right in front of you. So, you know, our staff can look at that at any time and communicate that to each guest when they're checking in. And most of the guests are looking at it before they even get to the counter. So they're already looking at it. So it's a really nice tool to add to this whole program, is having that up and out front for the guests right when they arrive.
Yeah, I think I was going to say that your views effectively is probably more 500 plus, right? Because you just have it in front of you, right? You just don't need to open a system. But Mike, what you're saying is exactly what we're finding as well. And we're tracking the performance of our 600 partners, right? The more views, the more engagement with the live map, the more Marshall notes also, like the interactions out on the golf course, the more we take that seriously, the better the performance. And here you've got 91% on pace at a 410 round time. Like, that is a job well done, right, to the team. And similarly down here for Bellevue, where your goal time is 4:30, you're coming in at 14 minutes faster than that, bringing in 84% of your groups on pace. So if you're going back to the factory analogy, this is a well-oiled machine, right? Whereas somebody who's not as engaged, running at 43% on pace, well, they've got some work to do. They've got opportunities to improve. And we want to obviously look at the total overall. We can look at date ranges. We can look at his improvement. Obviously, there's seasonality here. This is actually multi-year, including a big dip when COVID closed all the traffic, and then things were creeping up. So it's just interesting to look at this over time, but also looking at it this year. Obviously, August was the busiest. As was to be expected. So this is Bellevue, just a single golf course. So you can then dial into that. And just looking at the assignment also, are we assigning player names, the interaction numbers, and number of rounds tracked? And it's just a really good overview of the performance of the group. And then you can also look at what are the practices and processes that the really good clubs are employing, and how can we teach and train the other clubs to do a bit more of that, right? Because the impact, as you said, Mike, is post-round sentiment, improved pre-round communication, expectation setting, and then you have a real revenue gain to show for it. So is it worth the effort? Absolutely.
Yeah.
And the efficiency gains, yeah, there's one thing that I know that Drew, you're doing at Bellevue is you've got some geofences set up.
Hey, Bodo, I've got to drop off. I apologize. I've got a meeting with Seattle Treasury at 10:45.
No problem.
Sorry to have to scoot. Andrew can finish up. And I appreciate everybody listening to Andrew and I speak about our experience. And if anybody in the Northwest has any specific questions, you know where to find me. So all my PGA brothers and sisters out there, thanks so much. And thanks so much for having me on.
Great. Thank you, Mike. And all the best with your meeting. And thanks for joining us. Okay, I've got a few comments here that we should try and answer if we can. There's Marcus asking, looking forward to hearing how you set expectations with golfers before they tee off, including how they learn that they're being monitored, and what your marshals say to the layers and delayer groups. I think we probably have answered that, but yeah, the key is live what your pace of play is right now, and what you have a goal time, and also what the expected time is of any group out there at this moment, right? So you can then really just relay that. Very obvious to see. Hey, today we're playing to a 415, and that's our expectation of you. Let me just ask you, Drew, is anyone ever worried that they're being tracked? And how do you counter that if they are?
I've never heard of anything like that in terms of guest concerns. I mean, a lot of golf courses that do have, their GPS, the screens in their carts, they're well aware they're being tracked, because when they go off, off the cart path or in a bad spot, it tells them they've got to go backwards, things like that. So for golfers, they're used to it. If you're going to rent a golf cart, something's going to be in there, whether it be helping you with GPS or having Tag Marshal in there.
Yeah. Yeah, I know that some clubs, especially private clubs, where obviously the member may have opinions about not wanting to be tracked. What a lot of our managers do is they say, well, do you like a fast pace of play on the golf course? Yes. Does it frustrate you if players in front of you slow you down? Yes, of course. So we need to track those players in front of you, so that we can make sure that they don't slow you down. But in order for us to know where you're at, and if you're being slowed down, we also need to track you. Is that okay with you, right? So that we can make sure that we keep the guys in front of you on pace. All of a sudden, they're saying, yes, put that tracker on me, no problem, right? There was a question related to that about walking tracking. Does every walking group need a tracker? Yes. Not every player. That's not necessary. A group is only as fast as their slowest member, right? So we're tracking walkers. Generally, that gets clipped onto a golf bag, or it goes with a caddy, like they do at Van der Nuens, for instance. And then we want to know where they're at. And also that works really nicely in tandem, because if you think back to the live map that we've shown you, there's a square icon for golf carts. If you have walkers in between that, it's just a round icon. So you immediately know that's a walking group. That is a cart group. Let's look at, and I want to keep us on pace here. We've got about 10 minutes. Understanding Bellevue golf courses flow using data and analytics. So here's what our analytics hub looks at. And this is what Drew can obviously dial into, and he can look at any date range that he wants to see. It might be a weekend, it might be a whole week, it might be a month. He can look at month-to-month comparisons. But this is August now. On a single day, the goal time 4:30 and the average round time 4:13 on that day. And you're on pace. Success is 93%. Right down here, you can see that broken down. Which of the groups were faster than your goal time, which were on pace. And there's only one group here really that's a bit off. that was an easy day at the office, but also speaks to how effective your team is. And what's an important thing to look at also is the hole by hole breakdown. Not so much on this day where things run smoothly, but sometimes you can see immediately which holes were the choke points, and sometimes it's just a tricky setup, for instance. And then you can look at how can we improve this again incrementally, because if we can shave off 3 minutes of one hole, 2 minutes of another, and another 4 minutes of the third hole, that is almost a tee time gain, right? If you think about it that way. And how can we smooth out these choke points as per the data, right? One of the things that we spoke about earlier is the track map, which is the history of every round, and that includes also geofence breaches. Is this something that you ever use, Drew, when it comes to making sure that you understand what happened on a day where things weren't quite so smooth, or if there's ever an interaction with players post-round? Is that something that is useful to you guys?
Yeah, it's definitely useful, especially in the wintertime in the Pacific Northwest, being cart path only a lot. So we set up the geofences around the cart paths, so it will alert them that they're not where they're supposed to be. And then so if we have to chat with them at the turn or something like that, we have this kind of evidence about where the cart was on that particular day. Or no, I didn't get stuck on 4, but we can see right here that we did drive right next to the green on 4 and things like that. So it helps us with those kind of discussions a little bit. In the summertime, obviously, when you're all over the place, this map gets a little bit crazier because you see where these golfers are driving all over the place, and it just kind of helps identify if we have a problem. I really like this during the wintertime as opposed to in the summertime, just because it will help us identify groups that might not be following the rules and damaging the golf course.
Sure. Yeah, I think I've seen use cases here, like especially also in the sort of resort space where there's high price for a round, high expectations too. Sometimes post round, sometimes a week after, and somebody paid $200, say Chambers Bay. There's an email that comes in. The round that I played was almost 6 hours. It was horrible. I want my money back, right? So what do you do? And if you don't, I will let the world know on Facebook, on Instagram, and on Google ratings. So it's really difficult to counter, but if you have the data, you can then look at, okay, no, your round actually, and this is the round time. And then you can have a data and facts-based conversation. So this is just one of those different use cases. And also when it comes to private club member golf, to have an educational conversation with a member that is a repeat offender when it comes to pace, you can then really show them, hey, let's analyze your round. Where do you fall off the pace? Hey, I see it's on the 5th. Why did you book a lesson? And we can help you course manage a bit better. That is service, right? And it's not confrontational. And very often a member will be grateful, and because nobody wants to be the slowpoke. And if we can help them be better, then that's better for everyone. Just looking at the stats, and this is basically Jan through August at Bellevue. Like Mike said earlier, there's only a very small percentage of players that are actually delaying others, right? But the impact, if it's not managed, is often huge. And we sometimes find at a course that doesn't manage things so well, that 10% of players are delaying, but they're delaying 70% of the field, right? So it's a huge impact that a small group of players has, and that is exactly what causes player frustration, and things slow down, right? So where you want to play in 4 hours 20, all of a sudden your average round time is 4 hours 50. And we've actually stolen effectively hundreds of hours of player time. Whereas if you it turns on its head and you manage things well, like you guys do at Bellevue, you're gifting players additional time. Well, where they're going to spend that? In your clubhouse, right? So we have very often we have courses that are saying, well, we've seen an increase in food and beverage and also pro shop revenue because people come off the course happier and they have more time than they thought they would. So this data really then goes to show, there's benefit in the effort, and very often that's incremental. So from a revenue gains point of view, Mike obviously shared some numbers up front. because that's what drives the bus, and also because you've just been on a call with True, and that's what they want to know. But what he said is that they really understand how the course runs. And Drew, at Bellevue, you have very clear segmentation of your day, before 7 a.m., 7 to 8, 8 to 9. Before 7 a.m., your course plays in 3:17, 7 to 8, 3:44. So you can literally go and communicate that, right? And hopefully also attract players that want to play at that pace. And then only, like Mike said, from 11 onwards, you've got your 4:25, and that is below goal time. That's when you got to pay attention on your active management. Yeah, Mike, sorry, Drew, for you, obviously, that is something that must be useful when it comes to resource allocation and also informing your team. Here are the days that we need to pay extra attention. Here are the times of day that we need eyes on. How do you use this data and also the Analytics Hub data just to make sure that things keep progressing and improving?
Yeah, I mean, it's also a great promotional tool too, as well as with social media, with everybody has apps and things like that for each golf course. You can, show these golfers that, hey, if you're going to play before 8 a.m., you're going to play in 3 hours and 42 minutes. That's going to motivate someone like, wow, that sounds pretty good. I need to play fast. That's the right time to play, things like that. And then obviously, as we get farther into the day, we do understand that it does get a little bit more crowded. Your typical early AM golfers they're there for pace of play. They know what they're doing. You've got some beginners that show up in the middle part of the day. So we got to definitely keep track of those times, during the day, knowing that on Saturdays at 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock, 12 o'clock, it starts to slow down. So we need to be on top of it. So the 2 o'clock group is still going to have just as much fun as the 9 a.m. group on that day. It's pretty common to see it in the middle part of the day when it does typically slow down, but having this technology where you can look at it in real time and identify somebody very quickly really helps us identify problems and try and get that solution fixed or the problem fixed so we can keep the whole day going the right way.
Yeah, and I know that's one thing that our customer success team and many of those agents are actually PGA pros themselves, and they've managed golf courses, many of them with Tag Marshall. And what they offering is to help dial your course in with what we call a staggered goal time approach, right? So then we can set the system up to go and track to a say 3:20 goal time before 7, and through a 3:45 goal time or 3:40 goal time between 7 and 8, and then we can stagger it up to 4:10 between 8 and 9, so that we can really look at actually achieving those times. Because if you have a group that goes out at 8, play at 4:40, that really slows down the groups behind them early on at a critical time, right? So what you're finding is if you're dialing your system into these tighter standards, you're actually speeding up your day from the get-go, and you're pulling the bulk of your day along with that. And there's already data that substantiates that you can play the course in 3:45, right? So then we want to make sure that we do that also, and we manage things accordingly. So these, and it's not a one goal time application, but it's actually staggered according to the data. And then the next iteration of this is to look at, well, if we're really playing in 3:20 rather than 4:30, physics says that, well, we are covering more ground in a shorter time. Can we now not actually also reduce the intervals a little bit, right? So interval reduction in those faster times of the day, once you dig into the data, then very quickly frees up capacity, right? And also, if your day runs 20 minutes faster than it used to, you have a 1 or 2 tee times ability later in the day where somebody can play a full 18 without going into the twilight. Those are all capacity opportunities that many of our operators really appreciate. Drew, going back to the TV that you have mentioned a few times as being of a lot of value to the team and the golfers, you actually sent us these photos. And so what the screen does is rotates between the live map and between showing the current pace out on the golf course. You said it much like like at an airport, right? And the expected time, and it's really quite a neat feature. So yeah, I think maybe jumping ahead to the last point is how have the golfers responded to the technology, and what's their perception, and is that something that's positive for them?
Oh, 100%. I mean, it's something new. A lot of golf courses don't have this. So this is right as you're walking towards the counter. It's right at you. So you're staring right at it before you reach the counter. So it kind of gives the guest that interaction with the golf shop staff. Hey, what is this? Oh, this is, we're tracking everybody out there. So this is our pace of play. Here's what they're doing. And, our expected time as of right now, this is how long the golf round's going to take. And then they kind of just get a kick out of it. They kind of, because it goes through between 2 to 3 screens. So they can kind of see, oh, I can see cart 42 is not doing too well. And they kind of get a joke out of it or something like that. And they're just more aware of, like I said right at the beginning, is the perceived perception of how long it really took them to play golf here at Bellevue. They might be slow, but we're still playing in 4 hours and 29 minutes. You might be waiting on every tee box, where without this information up front that they got to see for themselves, they're going to perceive it was 5.5 hours. But in reality, it was still 4.5 hours. It just felt longer just because you're not getting to the tee and hitting the next shot. So this screen has been, perfect for that kind of changing that perception for this golf course. Personally, it's been great.
Yeah. Thanks, Drew. And we have reached the end of our session. And I know that Frank has to jump off, and he just mentioned we had no attrition, meaning nobody actually left and everyone's still here. Thank you so much for your patience, and also some of the questions that have come through. We started with 51 people. Now it's 52. Actually, now it's 50 because Mike and Frank have left early. Yeah, there's one other question that I saw came in, and that is, are you doing player surveys using the Tag Marshal platform? So just to answer that, so with our screen system, there's a halfway and a post round. How's your round going? Touchscreen survey where you can rate out of 5, and you can also leave a comment, and that is a really quick live interaction opportunity. I know that the Premier Group uses a post-round survey tool. Andrew, I don't know if you have that deployed at Bellevue. Are you using Players First? Is that what you've dived into?
Yeah, that's the surveys that we use. We turn them on for a month and turn them off for a month and turn them on for a month. So you kind of see where we're at throughout the year, whether it be the wintertime, the shoulder season, or the peak summertime, what people are concerned about, what they're happy about, and what they want to see improved. Yeah,
that's great. You can never have enough data and never know enough about your business, right? So yeah, like Mike said right in the beginning, you want to know everything you can about what the golfers want, right? And then you want to know, are we successful in giving that to them? Yeah, just to wrap up, Drew, thank you so much for your time and all the insight, and well done on your successful season at Bellevue.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, and here's some of the people that you might interact with working with Tag Marshal. And if you have any questions, shoot it over to Michael Glanville Smith, our partnership executive there in the Northwest, or David Hamilton. He is at home in Charleston. So we are HQ is in Atlanta, but obviously love traveling over to your neck of the woods, and our team always fights who gets to go to Bandon Dunes, as you can imagine. All right, Drew, thank you, and everyone who's stayed on until the last minute. We really appreciate you. And like Frank said, no need to do anything about your PDR credits. We have tracked you. We know that you're still here. We hope that you found this content interesting. If you have any questions, do reach out. And we hope to see you at one of the section events that our team will attend, and get to know you and your clubs a little bit better in the near future. Drew, all the best. I know you have a busy weekend ahead. Enjoy it.
Appreciate it. Bye.
And we'll see you soon. Okay. Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.